coming out of your degree, people should be trying to get as much experience as they can of some form of legal experience, because your CV is everything at that stage, because we get flooded with CVs and you've got to have something that stands out.
Hello and welcome to The Law According To. This is a monthly podcast where I speak to legal professionals about their career journey. My name is Mike Mears, and on this month's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Paul Sams, partner and head of property at Dutton, Gregory, Solicitors. Paul is an award-winning, nationally recognised expert in the field of residential property, having been asked to lecture other lawyers across the country. He has also been invited to speak on more than one occasion for housing associations and the RICS. Welcome, Paul.
Mike, makes me sound really interesting when going to speak to other lawyers. Not.
Anything to add to the intro there? I didn't miss anything out, did I? I'm sure I missed loads out, but I mean...
I've got a silver badge in cycling proficiency I'm very proud of. I always make reference. I think you covered it off quite well there.
Yeah, excellent. So silver badge is a great honour.
Congratulations. I wanted the gold, but I don't think they did them where I was a child. Rationing. So,
Paul, I wanted to talk obviously about your career in law, and I'm not sure if I made this up or I read it somewhere, but I'm pretty sure I read that you've wanted to be a lawyer since the age of 7. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know why people don't believe that I'm telling the truth. A lawyer telling the truth. I know it's a bit of a shock. My parents went to make their wills in a market town called Hexham in Northumberland. I was brought up in a town called Prudhoe, which is about 10 miles from Hexham one way, and the other way is 10 miles just outside of Newcastle. My parents went to make their wills, and we were sat down at 7. I was 7, my brother would be 5 or 6, because there's 20 months between us. And they gave us some orange squash. They gave my mum and dad a cup of tea. There was a fire going in the corner. My dad got a huge wad of cash out, because this is when everything was still paid for by cash, because cheque was considered modern in the 80s. And well, this is quite nice. This person's doing this. This looks okay. And on the way out, my dad pointed at the lawyer's car and said, "It's a Mercedes." He goes, "He does quite well. Being a lawyer is a good job." And I thought, that's not bad. And then used to watch TV shows, the likes of Matlock, I seem to recall, used to be on a Friday night. If I was lucky when I was little, I'd be sort of allowed to stay up late on one of the 4 channels we had available at the time to be able to watch that. And my interest has spiraled and went from there.
Amazing. It stuck with you. That's excellent. So you obviously went on to university, went through your training. So why particularly property law?
By accident, I think I fell into property law. When I did my degree, property was one of those things that it's a core subject. I believe it still is a core subject now in the LLB, so you had to do it. And it didn't particularly float my boat when I was at uni. Then I went off and did my legal practice course up in Northumbria. I went to university at Norwich, University of East Anglia. That's where I met my wife. And then I went back up north to Northumbria to do my LPC, because it was cheaper to stay at home. And my parents kindly fronted me the cash to pay for the LPC. And then as soon as I finished the LPC, where I liked property law, taught by Russell Hewitson, who's very well thought of, and writes a lot of books, does a lot of lecturing, was on the Law Society panel. He's a really good guy. I was okay at it, did reasonably well at it, but I ended up doing personal injury law for a year for a firm up in Newcastle. Then my wife had fallen into property law from training to be an accountant. It's very convoluted. Maybe we should get her on, you can tell her story. But then I got offered, she was going to come and work in Newcastle with me. She'd been offered a job by a firm called McKeague's that were run by Gordon McKeague, who was the former chairman of Newcastle United before Sir John Hall. Those that are Toon fans like me will know. And her firm down here on the south coast said, "Look, we'll give your ne'er-do-well boyfriend a job for 3 months to stop you going." So I came down here thinking I was going to do employment law, not quite sure why, and ended up falling into property and loved it, and just it's gone from there.
And so what was it you loved about it? what was it that grabbed your interest?
You get to see the whole span of human nature. You get people who are really great. It's about the only area of law where people are grateful to you when things go through, but you also get to see people having a hissy fit. You get to see people in terrible states because they've got in financial problems. People get stressed when they move. I know the last time that we moved as a family, I found it quite stressful, but being the good property lawyer that I am, I was in a chain of 12. So it's the fact that you get so much variety. It's financial, it's legal, it's very complicated, and I don't think it necessarily gets the credit that it should deserve amongst a lot of the other disciplines. I always like taking mickey out of the litigators because there's always a flood of bills at the end of each month of every firm I've ever been part of from the litigation department, because they always leave it to the last minute. You've got 6 months to file. Why wait until wait till the day before to do it? Which property lawyers tend to be a faster churn. And I've got the attention span of a goldfish as well sometimes. So the fact that you get to work on lots of different matters at different times suits my personality.
You can jump from one to the other without getting bored.
It's never boring. It's never dull. It's the one thing I'd say.
Excellent. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're around about you've been in industry around about 20 years. Is that right?
Yes, slightly over. I've been in property since 2001, and I've been qualified since 2003.
Okay, and I assume things have changed quite dramatically in that time. What sort of challenges have you faced over that period?
Well, I've been through the recession of 2008. That was fun, but I did quite well in that. And I've seen the technological advances. When I first started dealing with property work, you didn't ask people for their identification to prove that they were who they say they were, which nowadays sounds horrific, but you just didn't do it. You checked on purchases, and even that was as fairly taking a copy of a passport. Nowadays, we use electronic methods, but much tighter as a business community when it comes down to money laundering, which we should be. But technology has played a huge part. I know a lot of firms that when I first moved down to the South Coast 20 years ago from the Northeast, are still using the same template letters they were using 20 years ago. I see them and laugh at them. What they do now is type them on the typewriter, they scan them to me so they come across like that rather than like that. But things have moved on. I always used to say, if you become a property lawyer, if you like playing with colouring pencils, because you get to colour in plans to send off searches, that would take a good 20 minutes. It's quite enjoyable. You get to play with the pen. Now it doesn't take 20 minutes, so it takes longer than 20 seconds to order a search using the wrong platform.
Wow. No more colouring for you then?
No, but I do keep, just because I might need them one day, I do keep the colour pens.
You never know when they may come in handy. It's a good job your kids haven't kind of stolen from you, really, isn't it?
No, my kids are not into things like that. They just want very expensive gaming computers and an Xbox, and you name it tech-wise, we've got it, and they know how to make it work far better than their dad does.
It's all about the tech. Yeah, absolutely. It's scary, isn't it, when they get to that age where they pass your technical ability, which generally nowadays is around about 4, I think, isn't it?
I think it's about 4 months with my two. I'm pretty good with technology as it goes, compared to a lot of people. A couple of my partners think it's witchcraft that I can touch type.
Yeah, I think I used to, well, not touch type, but I used to be okay. But I'm finding the older I get, it's almost like my brain's going backwards now. I reread it and I think, well, half of that's not what I intend on writing, so I write it again. Sure. So many challenges, but obviously many successes. What would be the kind of highlights of your career so far?
It's interesting to say the highlights of your career, because I think it's all different depending on who you are. Lots of people just want to see their name up in lights because they've won an award or they've billed a lot of money and they've done that. Well, I've been there and done that, and I've got that too. What I'm more interested in, and I've always taken more pride in, is people who come from a background like mine. I came from a working class background. My dad worked in a factory that made toilet roll. My mum had more jobs than Mr. Ben to try and make ends meet for my brother and I when we were growing up. And so when I see people who are able to come into law, particularly qualify, who've got backgrounds similar to mine, though they've not had the advantages that lots of other people have had, that I always find to be the biggest success. So people I can see that have come through the ranks. We've got lots of people here at Dutton, Gregory have done that. My previous firm, in fairness, had that as well. But some firms just shy away from for example, we have a policy where we tend to recruit trainees from within, but a lot of firms will not do that. One of the firms I work for, a regional player down here, refused to do that. They wanted people to, as I put it, have built a well in Africa and done that and play polo with Prince William, whereas I'd rather people who had come from a background where they weren't as privileged, shall we say, and have had to work hard to get where they're going. And it doesn't matter whether they're the smartest person in the room or not, because if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I'm a big believer in that.
It's I'm with you on that. Kind of hard work it's such an important attribute, and I think in the past we've kind of made hiring mistakes in a similar sort of way, whereby we've looked at background and what they've done previously, but they can do moving forward. And hard work kind of overcomes talent. If talent doesn't work hard, I think the cliche goes. But I'm a great believer in that.
Our recruitment here at Dutton Gregory is all based on sort of, will they fit culturally with us? Because there are certain people, I know that I've spoken to lots of good lawyers in the past 12 months. They're great lawyers, but culturally they won't fit because they have a slightly outmoded way of doing things, I think. We're trying to be fairly cutting edge, but also fun while we're doing it. We've just come off our virtual general meeting this morning, and we're all sort of sat round on screens doing it remotely, but there's a lot of people in the office like I am today. And when we announced our awards that are handed out every quarter for people that have committed, united, progressive, that we call it, part of our culture of CUP, so we have some values there, you could hear the rounds of applause for people across the office, which is really nice, and people putting comments online, because we want people to celebrate success. And success, success breeds success, and we don't want people being jealous. We're a bit more like, dare I say it, the American culture, where the Americans are very good. They're not great at everything because no one is, but they're very good at promoting people and giving people credit. Whereas British is always like, no, don't celebrate, be reserved.
Oh yes, yes. The Americans are great at celebrating success, aren't they? But that's amazing. I think that if you've got that culture built in, then obviously, yes, like you say, you want people to join who actually can share that culture. Well, sorry, go on.
We interviewed someone the other day for a role, and I always say, so what's the culture like at your firm? And they said, well, we're just tied to our desk and expected to bill until we die. And she said, isn't yours the same? I went, no. There's no point in people are dead. What you want is people to enjoy their work, because happy people bring better results. And you can't be happy all of the time. There was one of the junior members of our team, I was giving someone a lift to the station on Tuesday because going for a meeting in London. And it's normally people giving me a lift, so I thought I'd do it the other way around. And she was having a proper rant when I went out. When I came back, I was like, have you simmered down now? Are you okay? She went, yeah, thanks for listening. I said, anytime, just have a rant. I'd rather be ranted at me, just get it out of your system. And she's one of our best performers, such a happy young lady, but she knows she can do it. And I don't think there are lots of firms where I know she could have done that to any of my partners.
But it's the same in any position, though, isn't it? You've sometimes you do just need to let off steam, and it may come across badly in a second. But obviously, it needs somebody like yourself who actually doesn't kind of take it to, whether it be personally or too much against the company. Everyone has a bad day. Everyone has a bad 5 minutes sometimes, don't they? You just need to kind of let that out and then move on. And sometimes just sharing it with someone kind of makes you realise actually it's not all that bad.
Yeah, it is. You know, even though I look like something crossed between Shrek, Paddy the Vet, and Sloth from the Goonies, the viewers that are old enough to know that, I am a fairly relaxed person at times. My wife would probably disagree, but you can't let things get on top of you. And I've been guilty of doing that in the past, and it's just, life is too short.
Yeah, 100%. And far too harsh on yourself, by the way, there. Your own harshest critic there from your description. So, Paul, going back to, obviously, you're obviously very keen on nurturing people who work with you. But looking back through your career and looking at more junior people in the companies that you've worked for in your current firm, what advice would you give to people who are maybe NQs or just coming out of finishing their degree? What advice would you give them at that stage of their career, or even if you were looking back to yourself at that stage? What advice would you have liked at that stage that you didn't receive?
I think coming out of your degree, people should be trying to get as much experience as they can of some form of legal experience, because your CV is everything at that stage, because we get flooded with CVs and you've got to have something that stands out, and having some new experience counts in your favour, even if that's making the tea for someone for a week. Not that that tends to happen anymore. More's the shame in a way, because I have to make my own tea. But it's those sort of things. I think getting experience, being seen, trying to do something, helping out at a law clinic, things like that work. As an NQ, I would say you probably decided during your training contract where you want to qualify into, and you've got to decide what type of work you want to do. So if you're really interested in crime, that's great, but bear in mind the fact that you're going to have to be prepared for someone to be sick down your seat at 3 o'clock in the morning and never get paid a huge amount of money unless you're in the really top echelons of it, which is very rare. There's a handful of people that make crime pay. If you want to be a family lawyer, you're going to have to deal with the emotional distress that comes with the very nature of that work. If you're a probate lawyer, again, you're going to have to deal with people that are bereaved. If you're a personal injury lawyer or clinical negligence lawyer, you're going to have to read some pretty horrific medical reports. If you're a commercial lawyer, you're going to have to use to people expecting you to drop everything and do it straight away. And if you're a property lawyer, you're going to need all of those skills put together and also be somewhat of a diplomat as well.
Just hopefully not having people sick down you at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Not too often. It has happened.
That's mainly on company nights out, is it?
Not so much company nights out, but I've been out with some of my clients at times when it's been interesting, shall we say.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine. Excellent. Okay, now, so if anybody would like to get in contact with you, Paul, how can they do that? If they'd like to discuss either career options at Dutton Gregory, or what you could do for them legal-wise.
If they're more than happy to contact me via our website. The details are out there at www.duttongregory.co.uk, or find me as the Dancing Lego Man on LinkedIn. I'm fairly easily recognisable on that because my Lego avatar. Apparently, I was doing another podcast for someone the other day for a trade publication, and they said they put it out there as defined by a Lego character. And I said, I'm sure my mum's really proud of me that I'm defined by a Lego character, but I do seem to have been defined that way, and it's a brand that works for me because it's quite relaxed and it shows that I've got a sense of humour, I think. Plus, Lego Paul is far better looking and much thinner than I am.
I think it's a great look. I think it's very distinctive and it's simple. It's such a simple brand, if you like, but look, and it's memorable, simple. But I think it's excellent. But like you say, I suppose being remembered as Lego Paul is probably not what you want on your.
I don't mind, because then I won't get mobbed in the street that way. That's the way I keep looking at it.
But that concludes today's episode. Thanks very much, Paul. I appreciate your time. It's been excellent, fantastic insights. We'll also put Paul's contact details in the comments below as well. So and also website for Dutton Gregory also. So thanks very much, and thank you for listening or watching. Remember if you're listening on Spotify, to leave us a 5-star review, and if you're watching on YouTube, then please subscribe for future episodes. So thanks very much, and see you at the next episode.